Tim. Welcome to the Unshakable Foundation's meeting of Cocaine Anonymous. This is a main share meeting, and it is today with great pleasure and much gratitude that we welcome Pat from California, who will be sharing for up to 40 minutes on the topic, We Need a Prison Escape. Following this share, we'll have the Q&A portion of the meeting. So Pat, it's over to you, please.
Tanya, thank you so much. And Young and all you guys, thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it greatly. Happy to be here. And I'm Pat. I'm an alcoholic. I was talking to Young and we were talking about this subject. And you know what? It is so appropriate. We all need a prison break from our disease. You know, the crazy thing, and we'll get into it here in a second. And so if you've got a big book, I'm going to jump around a little bit in the big book because I think it's important. Everything I think that we need to say in meetings, I think if it's grounded in the big book, it's a lot easier for people to sort of assimilate. It's a lot easier for people to sort of hold on to and grow from. I know it's true for me. God struck me sober in July the 9th, 2002. So I just celebrated 23 years. None of that is on my doing. And I truly mean that. You know, God did some God stuff before I knew anything about Alcoholics Anonymous. My last run for 11 years, I could not shut down the drink. I lost the first marriage. I lost the second marriage. I lost my 3 children. I lost my job. I lost my health. I was beginning to lose my mind. Of course, I did like the snakes that were crawling out of my skin. I really thought they were real. And, I liked the voices in my head going on. That was great. But the bottom line was, as I progressed into my alcoholism for the last 11 years, I was begging God for 11 years to save me from the drink. And for 11 years, it did not happen. So I had given up on God. And that's a little bit like a lot of people that I run into coming into the rooms. They're hoping that Alcoholics Anonymous or Cocaine Anonymous or any of our fellowships has an answer to take them out of the prison they're in. And so just sort of to set the stage, if you got a big book, turn over to page 151. Isn't that great? 151. Remember Bacardi? I don't know if you guys remember Bacardi 151. That was my summer lifeguard drink. I haven't thought about that for a while. I'm glad I didn't have to rescue any people off the lifeguard stand because it would not have been pretty. Anyway, in the second paragraph on page 151, it says this. See if you can relate. Put in your disease into this paragraph. The less people tolerated Pat, the more Pat withdrew from society, from life itself, as Pat became a subject of king alcohol, a shivering denizen of his mad realm, the chilling vapor that is loneliness settled down on Pat. It thickened, ever becoming blacker. Pat sought out some sordid places, hoping to find understanding, companionship, and approval. Momentarily, Pat did. Then would come the oblivion and the awful awakening to face the hideous 4 horsemen. Terror, bewilderment, frustration, despair. Pat's an unhappy drinker who, and anybody else reading this, they probably understand that they have our disease. Would you agree? Does that make sense? Now turn over to page 12. It's interesting. Bill starts out in his story about the terror that he was under. He ends in the vision for you, recalling the terror that he was under. And see if you can relate to this paragraph. It's the first full paragraph on page 8. Bill's just getting to the end of his run in step 1. And from 9 to 16, he's going to talk about the solution. But on page 8, he's deep, 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 deep in hopelessness. See if you could relate. No words can tell of the loneliness and the despair I found in the bitter morass of self-pity. Quicksand stretched out around me in all directions. I had met my match. I had been overwhelmed. Alcohol, cocaine was my master. Do you remember? I don't know about for you, but I remember way before I ever got sober, when I knew without a doubt that alcohol could do whatever it wanted to do with me and I had no choice in the matter. It was absolutely not a choice that I had to whether I picked up or did not pick up a drink, for how long I drank, how often I drank, none of that. And it didn't matter what the consequences were. Thinking to drink through, having more knowledge about my drink, fear sober me up for a little bit or whatever, it wasn't enough. Can you guys relate to that? Yeah? All right. Doctor's opinion, when it talks about this disease of alcoholism or just our disease in general, says this: I'm restless, I'm irritable, I'm discontent. And unless I find the ease and comfort from that first drink, all bets are off. I've got to find something bigger that gives me more comfort than what the drink did, or I'm going to drink again. And then on page 22 of the book, it talks about the summary of the physical side of our disease. And it says, it's gotten done, for all the pages of doctor's opinion up to page 23. And on page 22, the very bottom, it says this: we are equally positive that while he is any alcohol, once he takes any alcohol whatsoever into his system, something happens both in the bodily and mental sense, which makes it virtually impossible for Pat to stop. The experience of any alcoholic will abundantly confirm this. So that's a summation of the physical allergy. And then if you go over to page, and I'm almost done with this background stuff, so just bear with me, okay? But the reason I'm going into so much detail is that the book goes into so much detail because I think they know Pat. Pat's just not convinced that Pat's got to go to God to have a solution to this problem. Pat's going to figure it out in Pat's way. I'm going to do everything I could possibly do except for go to God. And the problem is Pat's solution is not going to work. So on page 39, it starts summarizing the mental side of our disease. And it says this in the first paragraph, middle of the first paragraph: but the actual or potential alcoholic will hardly an exception, will be absolutely unable to stop drinking on the basis of self-knowledge. That means I had no power of choice. I'm stone cold sober, and I cannot predict when I'm going to pick the drink up again. On page 41, it goes a little bit further, and it says, this is Fred's story, and it's the bottom paragraph: as soon as I regained my ability to think, I went carefully over the evening in Washington. Not only had I been off guard, I had made no fight whatever against the first drink. This time I had not even thought of the consequences. You ever had that kind of experience? It's crazy. And then finally on page 43, just in case Pat didn't figure it out, on the mental obsession of our disease, the very last paragraph on page 43 says this: Pat, listen up. We love you, but you're a hopeless drunk because the alcoholic at certain times has no effective mental defense against the first drink, Pat, except in a few rare cases, and you are not one of those few rare cases. Neither you nor any other human being, not the room of drunk, the group of drunks, not our sponsors, not anybody is going to provide such a defense. My defense must come from a higher power. Wow. It's pounding me. It says that my spiritual malady, that restless, irritable, and discontent, which are symptoms of the spiritual malady in the doctor's opinion, is saying, Pat, you're insane. You're absolutely insane. And you are seeking comfort from a substance that is poisoning your body, your spirit, your soul, and your mind. And it's only going to get worse. And yet you keep on going back to it over and over and over again. And I don't know what's wrong with me. Bill's saying there's that quicksand. On page 28, I'm finally getting to a place where I'm starting to listen up. The quicksand stretching out in all directions for Bill on page 12 of his story, or page 11 of his, or page 8 of his story. And then the desperation of a drowning man. On page 28, it's starting to tell me that if I really reach the end of my rope, if I'm really in prison in this disease, then I'm going to reach out my hand and I'm going to try to grab hold, even though it's a thin, small reed. We are in turn sought the same escape with all the desperation and drowning men. What seemed at first to be a flimsy reed, in other words, this solution that we're going to talk about, has proved to be the loving and powerful hand of God. I need a solution. If it's going to be God, I need to know that God loves me, that he actually cares about me, not the world. I'm glad if he cares about you, but I need to know that he cares about me. You guys agree? That makes sense? Now, it's great if God is loving, and he convinced me of that. But if he doesn't have any power to fix me, to break me out of jail, break me out of this prison, then no offense to God, what's the good of God? If he doesn't have enough power to fix me, to get me out of the hell that I'm in, then why would I go to God? So we need a God that's loving, and we need a God that's powerful. And then lastly, the coolest thing about God is he didn't wait to rescue. He comes after me. July the 9th, 2002 was no different than a bunch of other days, bunch of other months, bunch of other years. It was the same old again and again and again and again. I didn't know it was going to be the last day I ever drank. I didn't know that. It started out, I was in desperation. Yeah, I had all sorts of stuff going on. And I had finally told the truth to a therapist about what was going on, but I didn't know what was going. I didn't have any idea that God was rescuing me at that time. And so God does the impossible even before we start seeking him. And so now I want to go over to page 25 for a second. Are you guys getting bored with me bumping around these pages? Are you sure you're good? All right. I know it's a lot. Usually I don't jump into it this deep on this stuff, but I think it's very important. Look at page 25 on the great fact and the central fact. This great fact, God says this, is just this and nothing less. This is the second full paragraph on page 25. Pat, you're going to experience a deep and effective spiritual experience. It's going to revolutionize your entire life. Your idea, your attitude towards life, towards your fellows, towards your friends, towards your colleagues, towards your partner, your mate, towards God's universe is going to radically shift. That's a promise in the big book. And then the central fact is this, Pat. Today, you're going to experience, as you go through this work, the absolute certainty that your Creator, the one who made you before time began, who thought you into existence, that looks at you as his beloved masterpiece, none of us are a mistake. Not one of us on this call is a mistake. You are a masterpiece that God is in love with. And he says, our Creator is going to enter into our hearts. And he is going to live in a way that I'm going to be able to tell other people is indeed miraculous. In other words, my current day-to-day experience is going to reflect a God experience with God power, with God wisdom and God knowledge and God courage and God compassion and God love, which the only way I could describe it is, folks, it's miraculous. And indeed, it's true for me today. God commenced to accomplish these things in Pat, in each one of us, which Pat could never do by himself. That's the promise out of the big book. And then I want to do one last thing before we turn over to the rest of the fun stuff here. Turn over to page 13 of Bill's story. Bill wraps up his step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 experience. His step 2 experience is actually, and step 3 experience is actually happening on page 13. And listen to what Bill says. 2 pages before, Bill is absolutely not going to let God have any major part in his life. He doesn't care how loving the reign of God, the authority of God, the advice of God, the instruction of God could be in his life. He doesn't care, even if it's loving. He does not want to give up control of his life. There's no way. I am not turning my life over to God. I don't care. I don't care how loving he is. I don't care how powerful he is. I don't care. I'm not doing it, Ebby. I'm not. That's on page 11. Or excuse me, that's on page 12. On page 12, he says, I could go along with such conceptions of creative intelligence, universal mind, spirit of nature, but I resisted the thought of the czar of the heavens, however loving his sway, sway's a fancy word, it means authority in my life, might be. And so he's in a place where he's defiant. He's stubborn. He is not going to go there. And then something is shifting in Bill. So by 1 page later, on page 13, listen to what Bill says. I humbly offered myself to God as I then understood God. Him is a capital. I just put in the word God. Don't get freaked out by that. Whatever you call God right now, it's okay. God answers. In fact, he does things on the sly when we're first getting to know him. He doesn't even announce. When he struck me sober, he didn't write a skywriting across the sky. Hey, Pat, it's God. I just struck you sober. Make sure you tell me 3 times a day how grateful you are to me. God wasn't waiting for me to even thank God for striking me sober and saving my life. God's willing to grow with Pat right where Pat is at. I wasn't willing to even acknowledge God for probably the better part of my first year in sobriety. But here's what Bill says. On page 13, that second full paragraph, I humbly offered myself to God as I then understood him, to do with me as he would. That sounds like a step 3 experience, right? I placed myself, wait a minute, listen to this next word. I placed myself unreservedly under his care. How in the world did that happen? 1 page before he's saying, no, there's no way. I don't care how loving God is. I am not letting him have authority in my life. 1 page later, Bill's saying, I unreservedly give my life over to the care and direction of God. How did that happen? Here it is. Wait for it, Pat. I admitted for the first time that of myself, I was nothing. That's not saying that he thought he was a road turd. It's saying that he had no power at all to vitally affect and impact his life in a way that would free him from this disease. He had no way out. He couldn't accomplish it. The spiritual malady had him. The physical allergy had him. The mental obsession had him. He had no way out. I had no power. I had no choice. I had no control. I give. Uncle. That without God, I was lost. I ruthlessly faced my sins. Oh, there's a fancy word. It simply means a sin is any time I'm rebelling against God. God, I want my way. I don't want your way. I know that your way is all loving and good and whole and complete and creates peace and kindness and goodwill in my life. And for some insane reason, I don't want that. I want all the death. I want all the chaos. I want all the manipulation. I want all the jealousy. I want all the envy. I want all the resentments. I want all the anger. I want all the, oh, give me a good dose of that fear. I want some more of that good stuff. And that's what I'm choosing when I'm not choosing God. It's insane that we go there. Do you hear the insanity of that? It's insane. And then Bill says, so, and I wonder what kind of attitude he was in when he said this, but I ruthlessly faced my sins. In the 4th steps, it talks about, I can't fool myself about saleable goods in the inventory, the commercial inventory of my life. Something that's damaged and unsaleable, in other words, not profitable for my life, it doesn't work in my life. I've got to be willing to get rid of it, and quickly without regret. How fast would you let go of a rattlesnake to get away from that guy? How fast would you put down poison if you started to put it up to your lips and you found out it was strychnine? You would spit it out quickly and without regret. But with our disease of cocaine, or our disease, the substance of cocaine or alcohol, I think it's my friend. Because see, what our disease, the spiritual malady, does is tries to convince me of a lie. Oh, Pat, you don't understand. I know I took away your wife, your 3 kids, your job and everything else, your health and everything else. But honestly, if you just try me one more time, trust me, I won't attack you. I'll be your buddy and I'll give you the comfort you're so needing. Listen, Pat, I'm sorry. I went over the top a little bit. I'll back off a smidge. I'll give you a little bit of control. I'll give you a little bit of this, a little bit of that. It'll be okay this time. And our disease talks to us. And it tells me it's going to be okay this time. It tells me I'm the one that you need to put your life back together. You can't face life without me, Pat. And by the way, I believe that. I didn't believe there was a way for me to walk through life without alcohol. I didn't even know what sober people did. I didn't know what people did that weren't drinking on a 24/7 basis. What in the world do you do in your life? I became willing for my newfound friend. Boy, that's a great place to start with your belief about who you believe God to be. What are the qualities of friendship? What are the qualities of a friend you would never want to part with? Everybody else is abandoning you, but you have that one friend. What are the qualities in that friendship that you want to keep? So he has this newfound friend, and he says, you know what, newfound friend, will you do a solid for me? You got to break me out of prison. And what's imprisoning me is something I can't even see. It's a nature inside of me of this disease. And I can't fight it. I can't see it, and it overwhelms me. Will you please take out the roots of this disease, which we're going to talk about next, and the branches? In other words, how it impacts other people's lives. And Bill says, you know what, friend? I haven't had a drink since. So this book's promised me that if I will do what's in this book, I'm going to experience the promises and the freedom that they talk about in this book. And I was so desperate when I came into these rooms, I hung on every single page of this book. And I willed it to tell me a lie. I willed it to tell me it wasn't true. And it told me every time, it busted me, and it told me it was true. The promises kept on happening. So what am I up against? You know, on page 58 and 59, Bill and the gang tell me, Pat, what you're up against is worse than you think. The insanity in your heart, the insanity in your mind is worse than what you think. The mental obsession that you experience is worse than you think. The allergy of the body, the devastation of your life, what you will put up with to allow the devastation to continue is even worse than you think. So by page 58, the book tells me straight up, Pat, this disease is cunning, baffling, and powerful. It is too much for you. Basically, they're saying for 59 pages, I hope we have convinced you, Pat, that you are no match for alcoholism. You are no match for a cocaine addiction. You are no match as an addict to your substance. Pat, wait for it. We just spent an entire chapter. We introduced God in Doctor's Opinion. We went hard line with who God is in Bill's story, and we talk even more about God and we agnostics. In fact, when we get done with this book, Pat, 164 pages, we're going to talk about God over 400 times. And I know you don't want to hear about God, Pat, because you gave up on God. Thank God, God didn't give up on you. And it says on page 59, I'll just read it out loud. I love it. It's probably one of the most powerful statements in the entire big book. Remember that we deal, Pat, with alcohol. It's cunning, baffling, and powerful. Cocaine's the same. Without help, Pat, it is too much for you. Pat, there's one, capital one, who has all power. So it sort of dispels this myth that we have multiple gods out there in the multiple universe. There's one that has all the power, not 12, not 15, not 200. I'm not trying to offend anyone. What the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous is saying is that your concept of God, of your higher power, can be whatever God has put into your heart for it to be. And the book tells me that I could begin there, however limited my concept of God is. Start there, Pat. If you're honest about it, it's enough. And that's been my experience. Wait till you hear where my God experience started. It was crazy. Pat, there's one who has all power, and just in case we didn't convince you in We Agnostics, that one is God. In We Agnostics, page 46, it says that my higher power, that higher power, which is God. Okay? So higher power, synonym, God. That one is God. May you find him now. Pat, you must find him now in the original text. You got to find him. If you don't find him, all bets are off. So I have this question in my mind. Why is it that I'm so resistant to just holding on to God? In other words, God hands me the keys to my jail cell, and he says, Pat, I'm handing you the keys to the kingdom. I'm giving you the keystone decision. I am giving you the way out. Pat, you playing God, trying to wrestle yourself out of this jail cell, out of this prison that you put yourself in with the disease, you're not successful. You're not strong enough. You're not powerful enough to get yourself out of this. I am handing you the keys, Pat. Will you go with me? And in the third step conversation on page 62, he says to me, the guys in the big book, they say to me, it's a love story, by the way. The Alcoholics Anonymous is a love story from alcoholics who were not recovered, who became recovered, to you and I who were not recovered. It's a love story for desperate people that need a drastic solution. And on page 62 at the very bottom, it says, Pat, please, buddy, please, examine your life. Did playing God, ruling your life, work? Did it work? Did it work long enough, strong enough, deep enough, far enough? Did it work? Did it cure the personal relationship conflicts that you're experiencing? Did it quiet the voices in your head that tell you you're no good, you'll never amount to anything, you'll always be alone, you're unlovable, you're a piece of dirt, you're a piece of trash, you should walk around with shame and guilt for the rest of your life, you are a despicable human being sucking down oxygen that could be better used by a cow? You're disgusting. How am I going to quiet those voices? It's the emotional nature that's going on in the bedevilments on page 52. I can't even stop it. I can't slow it down. It's taking over my thinking. I wake up in the morning and the thinking is going on. These 9 or 10 or 12 voices are going off and they're trying to kill me on a daily basis. They're savage. You wouldn't allow a human being to ever speak to your grandson or your granddaughter, your daughter, your spouse like we speak to ourselves. It's killing us. And then, Pat, how about you playing God? How's that working for you with your view of life? Are you still miserable when you wake up? Are you still longing for the fairy godmother to take you out of the misery you're in? How about the depression? Is there anything that's going to take the carving knives out of your hands that is carving up your soul and your spirit and your mind on a day-to-day basis in a silent but deadly cell? You able to make a living? Can you show up consistently? Can't pull that off either, Pat? How you doing on being happy? How you doing about not being in fear? How you doing about not being of lack of use to other people? Being of use to yourself? How you doing as far as being of real help to another human being where you're actually making a qualitative difference? Oh, that's not working either? Perhaps, Pat, just perhaps, maybe a solution to these problems is more important than the wildest, craziest, most wonderful, imaginative idea you could ever conceive in your mind, other than solving these problems that are so deep, deep, deep down in your soul. Is it more important? How's it working? And the conclusion on 62 is, Pat, it's not working. You can't play God, son. You're just not very good at it. You don't have the skill set. You don't have the pedigree. You haven't been around long enough, and you don't love yourself enough. Isn't that weird? We don't even love ourselves as much as God loves us. We don't even care for ourselves as much as God cares for us. He said, Pat, here, we're going to break it down really easy. We got a solution for you. You hold on to these jail cell keys. This is the way out. Listen to us closely because we're going to spend the rest of the text to teach you about this jail cell. Hey, how am I doing young in time? I got all excited. I got 8 minutes? Got it. I got it. Okay, good. Thanks. This is a meditation, and I mean this with all the sincerity in my heart. I didn't grow up with a father that was emotive or sharing or communicative. He was scary. He was a little bit unsafe, a lot of bit unsafe. And so when the book on page 62, in fact, if you get your book open on the bottom of page 62, it says this. This is the how and the why of it, Pat. First of all, Pat, please quit playing God. Pat, it's not working for you. It never is going to work for you. Next, Pat, here's what we want you to do in this drama called life. Let God be your director. You don't have any solid way of giving yourself guidance, Pat. The guidance you give yourself takes you into affairs with women that are not your spouse. They take you into doing lying and deceitful business deals to get ahead because you're scared of failure. It's going to take you into places that you can't easily unwind. You got bad guidance. Let the director, God the director, be your guiding. Let the director give you your purpose in life. I'm walking around without purpose. The next thing it says is, let God be my principal. Principal? Quit representing yourself, Pat, and making everybody else in life represent you. You're not good at representing yourself, who you want to be. You never show up the way you want to show up. And you can't make other people show up in your life the way you want them to show up in your life. So quit it. You become the agent. Let God be the principal. Pat, let God be your father. And that was really a hard swallow, guys, because I didn't have a good father. I didn't know how to put that into terms that I could deal with. So for each one of these, let these things be a meditation for you and say, God, would you please show me and teach me about each one of these attributes of who you are? And then later on, it says this. Most good ideas are simple, and the concept was a keystone. The keystone of an arch is what holds an arch from collapsing. A keystone is like what do you call those things? Geometric shape. I don't even know what they're called. You guys know what I'm talking about. The keystone drops in and it holds both arch sides from collapsing. That's my life. I need something to hold me up. I need something that will help me not collapse. It says this is a keystone of a new and triumphant arch that you and I are going to pass to freedom. The promise in the big book is that when we do the things that are outlined in this book, we are going to literally, because of this new relationship with God, my director, my principal, my father, later on it's going to say God's my employer and my creator. When I have these 5 aspects of who God is in my life, it's going to start recreating my life. And it's incredible. And I'm going to end with this story. Prodigal son in the Bible is one of my favorite stories ever because it's Jesus talking to people about how much he loves them, how much God the Father loves us. And I'm going to be very quick because I got 4 minutes. That's perfect timing. Thank you, Young. I like having that clock up there. It's really helpful. This prodigal, it was me. I wanted to steal everything from life that God had given me. And I wanted to use it for my own purposes. And so I go off and live my life. And I mean, I live it hard and I live it fast, and I was a train wreck. And I absolutely demolished my life. And at some point, when I finally come into these rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, I finally turn back and I say, there's got to be a solution. I don't have it. In the prodigal son story, after this guy blows up his life completely, he still doesn't know the real character of his father, who was so loving. His father, this prodigal son, demanded that he be given half of the inheritance to have during lifetime, which was an utter slap in the face to the father back in the Middle East. It was not allowed. It was not even thought of. It was outrageous for this younger son to even ask for this wealth. And the father, ironically, gives him the wealth. And the guy blows up his life. He goes off, lives hard, dies hard. You know, he's dying hard. And he comes to his senses. You know what? I've blown it. I'll never be my father's son again. I've given up that privilege. I'll never, ever be able to look my father in the eye. But I'm starving to death, literally. I'm going to go back to my father with hat in hand, and I'm going to beg him to take me on as a servant, not even as a son. And he's walking back, and he's at the top of the hill coming down into the valley where his father is. And far down in the valley, he sees this figure running towards him. And it turns out, gang, to be his own father. And his father is running to him for 2 reasons. He's got to get there first, and this is a Middle Eastern story, and they all know this. The father had to get to his son before the villagers got to his son. See, it wasn't God condemning him. It was the villagers condemning him. And they were going to kill him. They were going to stone him. They were going to brutalize this kid because they knew how offensive he had been to the father. So the father gets to his son before all others. And the son's got this prepared speech. He's going to tell, hey, Dad, I know I'm not your dad anymore. Will you let me just work for you? And the dad cuts him off. And he hugs his son with a hug that I can't even imagine. And the son hugs the father back. And then the father steps over and he says, son, I've got a robe of royalty for you. You are not a mistake, and I love you. I'm so glad you're back. I'm going to give you a robe of royalty. And I'm going to put a ring on your finger that signifies to the entire world that you have the authority to operate on my behalf. You are going to become an intelligent agent, a spearhead of my ever-advancing creation, God. Page 49 kind of thing. And then I'm going to put sandals on your feet to protect you and to help you walk through life with me, safe and protected. And you're going to go on an adventure with me. That's why I have trekking shoes on you. And that's not it. That's not all. Wait for it. Wait for it. Come back to the house. Come back to my time with me. Come back to fellowship with me, God, because I am going to throw the party of the century for you. You are the guest of honor, son. You were dead. You were living life in rebellion against me, and now you're back. Celebrate with me. Is that a story for the stories? I love you guys. Thank you so much.
Best, come on in.
Thanks for your service, Tanya. Hi, everyone. My name's Young, recovered addict. Thank you so much, Pat. Really, really good to hear you tonight. Quick question. Well, one thing came into my mind, and it's something I think you read from the book. Remember, we deal with alcohol, cunning, baffling, powerful. And as you were talking, I was thinking, remember, we deal with our mind. My mind is so cunning, baffling, powerful. When you laid it out there, God's just like calling me in, but yet I'm trying to deny this truth. Anyway, my question. You mentioned, and I really relate to this because I was similar experience. In your first year, I think you said you couldn't acknowledge God, or you were trying to ignore. I couldn't even say the word God in my first year. And I just wanted to ask you how that kind of looked for you.
Oh,
Thanks so much.
real quick, I want to hear you share. Young, great question. When I discovered looking up at the wall, it was like 2 or 3 months into my sobriety, and I could look up at the wall, and I started to realize that this whole thing called AA was all about me forming a relationship with God. My heart sank. I mean, I was like devastated. I said, you got to be kidding me. You're telling me the whole answer here is God? How in the world can that be? I tried the God thing for years. It never worked. So that was where I was at. But doing the work in the first step, it got me to such a place of desperation and convinced me beyond a shadow of a doubt, smashed home the idea that I could ever do anything by myself. I had to become open-minded on spiritual things. And that was my start. Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Young. And Michael, come on in.
Hi, thank you, Pat. Michael, my forward addict. Absolutely enjoyed every minute of that. I feel like I've been spiritually cleansed or something. It was wonderful. So I've got a question, and sort of around your step 11 practice, and it's what do you do like on the daily to improve your conscious contact with God rather than just maintain? Because sometimes I can find in myself that I'm just like, after a while, I say the same prayers and I need to change it up, or I do the same meditation and I need to change it up. And it's a two-part question because I'm greedy. And how do you differentiate between seeking spiritual progress and spiritual perfection? And thanks again, Pat. It was wonderful. Cheers.
Oh, yeah. You guys are a tough crowd, man. You got some great questions. First of all, I agree with you, Michael. Step 11 and step 10 are not maintenance steps. They're growth steps. We've entered the world of the spirit. Our next function is to grow in understanding and effectiveness. Some of our folks, we were just looking at that this morning. So spiritual seeking, this is going to sound weird when I say it, but it's my experience for 23 years. God is the director of my spiritual growth. I seek God in prayer. I ask God for things that are going on in my heart. I read spiritual literature. Like, if you were to look at my Bible, you can't really, hold on a second. This really does relate. Just a second. My Bible is as messed up and marked up as my big book. That's my Bible, right? It's falling apart. Parts are falling out of it, like, so on and so forth, right? And it compares to my big book, right? My big book's all marked up, like, all over marked, it's all trapped up. Those are my two primary sources for what I'm trying to do as far as growth. And then the spiritual perfection, it's so cool. I don't have to worry about it, because if you try for a week, to be honest, my experience is I fail miserably. When I try for a week to be loving and non-judgmental, I fail miserably. So I don't ever really worry, Michael, about perfection. I really don't. What I'm asking God to do is separate out the delusions and the being asleep, so that I could be aware of when God's gentle voice is saying, Pat, go in this direction. Pat, do this. Pat, do that. Pat, be here with me. Pat, rest. Pat, I love you. Will you accept my love? It becomes a rhythmic dance and joy-filled time with God over the years. And I don't miss, it's not about being legalistic about it, but I don't miss my quiet times. I always do my step 10, or as much as I could humanly remember. Same with my step 11 practice. I'm rigorous about both of those. And I think that if we would just do what's in the principles in this big book, we are off to the races, Michael, and you probably already know that. So God bless you, God bless you, God bless you.
Oh, thank you for your question, Michael. And Olivia, you're in next, please.
Oh, am I unmuted? Can you hear me?
Yep, you're good.
Okay, awesome. Hi, my name's Olivia, alcoholic addict. Hi. So I have like 90 days off of weed and alcohol and everything else, and 23 days now off of Suboxone because I'm an opiate addict, and I'm on my third step, but I'm about to finish. And I just have a lot of fear surrounding my fourth step and telling my sponsor my fourth step, and like
Oh, yeah.
I have fear of like, because I'm on like felony probation, I'm like, she's gonna tell my PO like all I've done.
Yeah,
She's gonna
yeah,
tell my dad because he's in the program. She's gonna tell my stepmom because that was her old sponsor. Like
yeah.
just fear, 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 fear. And I know like probably 99% of it's just like in my head, but it's really hard to like let go of, and it makes me not want to do my fourth step. So I guess just like the topic is like fear and like getting over myself basically when doing that. And I really liked your share. It was cool.
Thank you, thank you. Great question. And you know what? You're street smart. And part of this thing is you got to be convinced that your sponsor's not going to tell. You got to be convinced that your sponsor's not going to share stuff that you're sharing in your fourth step. And that's like category 1 sponsor kind of responsibility, that anything that we hear, we cannot share ever. It is not public information. When I hear a fifth step from anyone, my wife's also in the program. My wife has no clue ever about any fifth step that I'm doing with somebody, ever. It never is it's never shared from the podium. It's never shared anywhere. It absolutely is, because it's life and death. Olivia, it's life and death. Because if you can get honest and let God touch the areas in your resentments and your fears and your relationships and all the stuff that have blown us all up, God's going to move in your heart and your mind that's going to free you from the hell that you've been in. And part of that is he's going to give you a new attitude, and he's going to give you a new relationship with him, and he's going to show you what's been blocking you off, which is selfish self-centeredness. And that's the root of our problems. That's what's causing all the jamming us up. That's all the trouble. And so what ends up happening is that you're going to sit with your sponsor, and your sponsor is going to assure you, and you're going to both go in prayer and say, God, protect me as I do this fourth step. That's what we do our third step. It says, I'm going to fully abandon myself to God. I'm going to depend on God to keep me safe and protected. And the coolest thing is, Olivia, I didn't believe it was possible. and God kept me safe and protected. So incrementally, you can't do it wrong. You're not going to jam yourself up. Pray and just ask God, God, help me be willing to tell the truth. Help me be willing to go one more step. Help me be willing to look in the eyes of my sponsor and say, my life is dependent upon you not sharing stuff that can't be shared.
Thank you for your
God
question.
won't drop you. God won't drop you. You're safe. And congratulations, you've been on a woolly, wild ride.
Well, that was wonderful. Thank you, both of you. And the last question of the evening is Danny.
Thanks, Tanya. My name's Danny. I'm an addict. And Pat, thanks so much. Absolutely amazing. So much depth and weight in what you were sharing. I loved how you went round the book. My question is, you've just mentioned it, replying to Michael's question. The world of the spirit, that was my question. That was what was in my mind. Was there a moment when you first went through the work that you knew that you were in the world of the spirit? And very briefly, what does that look like when you're in the world of the spirit? Thanks, Pat.
Gotcha. Incredible question, man. You guys are making my brain hurt. I'm just a simple guy. You know that, right? I'm just like a little basic guy. I was an educational variety person. And people started recognizing that I was changing before I did. And that's just the truth of it. My kids started recognizing that I was changing when they finally started letting me talk to them again. And people in the rooms, because I was known by people in the rooms because I went there 3 times a day, because I couldn't work my first year in sobriety. I mean, I was always there. So educationally, I grew into, wow, I really am living this thing. And here's what the change is. The world of the spirit, I found myself becoming loving and tolerant and kind and patient and courageous, truth-telling, wanting to care for another person. I started losing interest in myself, gaining interest in my fellows. Now, those are some hallmarks. And now, obviously, I could take a machine gun and blow holes all through each one of those saying, yeah, Pat, really? That's your truth? Well, let me show you what you did yesterday, the day before, the day before. But the trajectory of my life, Danny, is that direction. And it aligns with what I know about who God is. The fruit of the Spirit in the Bible talks about, I'm going to become loving, patient, kind, good, gentle, faithful, and tolerant, and self-control. There's some other things in there, but that's bottom line. And I'm starting to see those fruit come up, and I'm not trying to create them. That's the craziest thing. It happens as a result of hanging around God. As I start to kick the rocks down the dirt path in the country road with God and talk to him and have a piece of grass in my mouth and chewing on a blade of grass and asking God questions, he lovingly helps me and steers me in directions that I show up differently. Last answer. Every day I pray for my wife, Karen, because I didn't know how to be a loving person. I didn't think I could ever be in a relationship. And on the October the 1st, we're going to celebrate 20 years of marriage. And I've been faithful. I've never departed. And it is a miracle of God. And I'm more in love with Karen than I ever could even imagine. Karen's in the program. But there's a 9th step promise that I pray on a daily basis. My Creator, God, 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 will you please show me the way of patience, tolerance, kindliness, and love to Karen? And folks, Danny, it has changed my heart. And I have tears when I think about it because I'm not the same man I used to be. And you know the coolest thing? Karen knows it too, and she feels safe and protected today.
Oh, that was lovely. Pauline, that was the last question of the evening. Is everyone okay if Pauline jumps in and asks one more question? I've got lots of thumbs up. Perfect. Come on in, darling.
Oh, thank you so much. My name's Pauline and I'm from Glasgow in Scotland. Hi, Pat. I thoroughly enjoyed your share, brother. The question I have for you, I'll be really, really quick. How many people can we sponsor safely at one time without getting overwhelmed?
Wow. Great question. There's been times I've been overwhelmed by one. All right. There's other times where I might have 10 actively in the work. And it's just, it's rhythmic and it works. I think the answer is every time before I take on somebody which is an honor and a privilege to sponsor them through this work and be a guide to freedom for somebody else, I take it to God and I say, God, what do you think? Are we going this direction? And, you know, on the 11-step prayer, it says I could pray to God for knowledge and direction, right? I could pray for the knowledge of God's will and the power to carry it out. So I don't really worry about a fixed number, and my heart and my mind and my spirit sort of ebbs and flows with the answer. Right now, you know, I've got a pretty full plate. And, you know, I know that after I finish with the current group of folks, I'll probably dial it back just a smidge. But I don't know. You know, God always has God's stuff in mind, and it's not my business. I'm God's intelligent agent. I'm God's spearhead. Spearhead, that means we're advancing, taking territory, watching God set people free. And the addiction, if you will, I have to that is I want to see more people sooner get free. Yeah, but it's his creation, not Pat's. Thank you very much for that. Thank you, God.